As we continue our conversation about gender, we're going to take a look at how so much of it is socially constructed. So let's start right there with a definition of social construction. We are collectively, as a society, as institutions, as peer groups, as entertainment, as like the internet and social media, we're constructing what gender means. And a lot of times, the social construction of the world around us means that we're making a lot of assumptions together about what is real. So if you were to think about specifically gender stereotypes, and if I had you write a whole list of gender stereotypes for masculine and feminine, if I had you turn to that list and say, okay, tell me what's real, what is unarguably real. What percentage do you think of these kinds of ideas? Because even if stereotypes aren't real, it doesn't matter. They hold a heck of a lot of power. But like, what is real? And so this idea of shared assumptions about reality. So a lot of what is socially constructed is in that binary that we've talked about before that I want to review for a quick second. So the binary is something that we have said this is the way it is. And so again, that means we've got only two choices and they're oppositional. They're opposite on the opposite sides. And so when we've got the gender binary, you've got two types of people: female-bodied people who are feminine, like it says, and then male-bodied people who are masculine. Those are our only two choices that we have really socially constructed for the most part in society. Is that social construction changing nowadays? I think so. I'm grateful for it. It'll be interesting to see, because as we socially construct things in our modern day, they're going to look different than they did 50 years ago, 100 years ago. What is the social construction of our everyday lives going to look like? What are our interactions, our shared assumptions about reality? What is that going to look like in 10 years? What is that going to look like in 20 years? What are going to be things that, again, assumptions, right? Things we take for granted. What are going to be things in our future that we totally take for granted in relation to gender? Like gendered knowledge that we just all know, and that's what's considered, in the word that's coming up next, the norm. How's that going to look different? So norms are something that you're very used to. You do them every single day. I do them every single day. We all do. Again, they're socially constructed and they're always changing. So norms, even 10 years ago, can look different than now. And they certainly sure as heck did, 30, 40 years ago. So when we're talking about norms, we're talking about what's expected in life, the usual, typical, standard stuff. We're talking about the fact that they are developed oftentimes, like they're group-held beliefs. So it's different groups have different norms. Teenagers, right, have different norms than I do as I think I'm defined as a middle-aged person officially, which is fine with me. But I would have different norms than somebody 30, 40 years older than I am. So I would have different norms as a teacher than I would as a student. I would have different norms as a parent versus, I don't know, an aunt. Being an aunt is way more fun than being a parent, for those of you who are lucky enough to be an aunt or an uncle. The one that I always go to is that they're unwritten rules, and these unwritten rules govern our behavior. But that idea of unwritten, we don't get a manual that says, do this. We don't get a rule book that says this is what, quote unquote, normal is. Like, think of me like if you saw me right now, like making air quotes and like cringing my face up, because that word normal is really kind of problematic. Because if all of this is socially constructed, it's not really fair of us to be like, well, that's normal, that's not normal. So something to kind of think about. Think about all the gender norms you follow. Think about the norms that you follow within your families. Let's say that your family is a family of huggers. You love hugging, big kisses on the cheek. Like that's your demonstrative and your affection. Let's say that you were dating somebody or you had a good friend and you went to go see their family and you're a hugger, right? They're not huggers. Or imagine, quite honestly, a not hugger, somebody who just hasn't been socialized to, be demonstratively affectionate with their family, comes into a family of huggers and kissers on the cheek and all that kind of stuff. Like, you can kind of see a lot of times norms really come to light when things go wrong. The way that I oftentimes teach this to my students, if I'm together in person, I do this a lot Granted, we're taking a women's studies class, but I'm lucky enough to teach sociology too. I do this a lot in my intro to search class, even though it's, oh my gosh. I have to sometimes I'm like, I'm too tired, I'm too exhausted. I don't have the bandwidth to do this, but here's what I do. It's usually, we talk about this early in the semester, and students know me at this point a little bit, but not too much. The day that I'm going to try and teach them norms and kind of show them by example that you really realize all the things that we do as unwritten rules, you really realize they exist when they go wrong. As the teacher, I don't start class. I just sit down at a desk and I do nothing. I don't take anything with me. I leave my phone. I leave all papers. It's not like I sit down and make it look like I'm, trying to get some work done. Like I sit there and stare and do nothing. And I wait. And I wait. Students usually in my in-person classes, I really, really encourage that phones are completely put away because I feel like if phones were out, students would sit on their phone and be like, I don't know what she's doing, but oh well, I'm on my phone, right? So the students are kind of sitting there waiting. And so if somebody asks me if I'm okay, I tell them yes, and then I go right back to like staring off into nowhere and doing nothing. And now the room has gotten even weirder because they're like, what is going on? I don't stop until a student says, are you okay? Or no, are you okay? I'll say yes and keep it going. But if they're like, what are we doing? Is this for class? Like kind of question me further, then I'll finally break and go back to being myself, being the teacher. Because technically that person that was like, what are you doing? They're breaking a norm too. Because you don't call people on their weird shit. Sorry, I couldn't think of another word. Right? You might say to like one of your friends or your like sibling or something like, why are you being so like, stop? Why are you being so weird? But you wouldn't do that to a teacher. So that person who like speaks up and says something is breaking a norm. And that's the thing. We act like we have to follow these norms all the time. And yeah, sometimes we do. And quite honestly, sometimes they're very serious. Like physical, scary, worrisome harm can come to people who break norms and make other people feel deeply uncomfortable. And a lot of times that happens with gender norms. But also, a lot of times if we kind of go against the norms, like there's moments of connection that can happen. There's moments of understanding. Like a lot can be built. Okay, let's continue to talk about this. When you follow norms and when you break norms, you get rewarded and you get punished. Those rewards are called positive sanctions, and those punishments are called negative sanctions. Positive sanctions, as a teacher, I would say like examples of positive sanctions that I get from my students. When you're nice to me. No, like if I'm making my way around a room and students are all working in little groups, because I do that a ton, and like I stop by and ask how, any questions, how are things going? Or I kind of jump in on their conversation a little bit. And they like are really excited to include me. That's a positive sanction. Because if they were like, no, we're fine, and kind of try and shut me out, which is fine. It's not like I have to be part of every group. Like it's their group, not mine. But like those moments where like students are excited to tell me something, total positive sanction. If somebody were to say to me, oh, Professor Griffin, your skirt's really cute today or something. Doesn't happen too often, but I think my skirts are cute. But like that would be a positive sanction. Like maybe they're kissing my ass, but let's here nor there. To give somebody a compliment, hopefully sincere, is like I think you look, nice enough, cute enough, something enough. Like, so those kinds of rewards for like, you're doing this right. If you are on social media, what's a positive sanction? Likes and comments, right? So what are the negative sanctions then? What are the punishments? I would argue that there's one main one. Think about the last time somebody did something. Maybe they're standing too close to you, that they don't know you, right? My daughter, oh my goodness. She's like freaking Velcro. Like she's right up. And I've had to say to her, you realize if you do this to other people, it's not normal, right? You'd step away from them. You wouldn't say, don't stand so close to me, because again, you wouldn't break that norm. You would stay quiet, but you'd like inch away. If they came closer to you again. If somebody was talking to you, let's say they're making small talk, but you're not a real small talk. That's not your kind of norm behavior. You're going to kind of give them one-word answers. You're not going to engage. You're not going to have all conversation. Really, honestly, like I would say the main negative sanction would be that you don't engage, you ignore, you back away. And think about that in relation to somebody who always gets ignored or backed away from. It's really alienating. And social alienation is excruciatingly painful. Think about this in relation to gender, the topic at hand, right? If somebody's not fitting into the gendered norms, and a lot of times those gendered norms are defined by us looking at somebody and trying to look for visual cues so that we understand where they fit in the binary, because our world has been shaped and socially constructed that they're either female-bodied and feminine or masculine, male-bodied rather and masculine. Like, we're trying to make sense of it because we have norms. People who don't fit into gender norms a lot of times can experience that social alienation. And like I said before, we can laugh about, my students, I made my classroom weird so that I could teach them norms and stuff. But norms they can be rules, quite honestly, in relation to gender. That if you don't follow them, you're going to be alienated. If you don't follow them, you're going to be mistreated. If you don't follow some gender norms, you could actually be in danger. So I don't want to be too doom and gloom, but it's when you really think about it, people have been. And quite honestly, historically, and continuing to this day, when our society is sticking with this binary model of only two choices and you don't fit into it, a lot of times people don't feel a place. And like the part of the danger comes from their own perceptions of themselves, and people have hurt themselves. People who haven't fit into the gender binary have done far worse and ended their lives. So I kind of want to take a moment to really think about the impact of these very simple things, these little norms that we follow every day, and how they can really, really mean a whole heck of a lot to our existence collectively as a society. Okay, let's continue on. I am going to lighten this up in a minute, so bear with me. The ways that we learn the norms, we learn them from our family. Family, where I said that they're unwritten rules, family's probably actually they're not going to write it, but they're going to tell you. Like, you need to say please, you need to say thank you, don't pick your note, like just on and on, stuff like that, right? So a lot of times parents are teaching their kids not only just general behavior norms, but also gender norms, right? Peer groups are going to teach us, so these agents of socialization, the way that we learn norms. School is going to teach us various norms, possibly if we practice religious beliefs. Our workplace is going to have norms. And then mass media, which is really now basically just the internet and social media, because from a newspaper or something, those are increasingly disappearing from our society. But think about how much, to the point where we don't even know how much we are being shaped by our media consumption, considering it can be round the clock, hours a day type of thing. Okay, like I said, one more example that we're really kind of lightening up our conversation here to a certain extent. Bet you didn't see that coming. So some of you might use a bathroom with urinals. Some of you might not. I usually don't, although in college, my freshman dorm, the bathroom did have a wall of urinals and they put plants in each one, and it was just very decorative. If you are a person who utilizes a bathroom with urinals, there's norms, right? And those of us who might not use a bathroom with urinals don't necessarily know the norms. And the people that use bathrooms with urinals, how did they learn the norms? So if you think about, if the one that's closest to us in the picture and the one that's farthest apart, if the one that's closest to us is like urinal number 1 and the one that's closest to the wall over there that we can barely see is 5. If you walk into an empty bathroom, what urinal are you going to use, right? 3, 4, 5 maybe? But if you walk in and somebody's at 2, are you going to use 3? No, you're probably maybe 4 or 5. If you walk in and somebody's at 4, are you going to use 5? No. Right? And so it's very interesting because when I do talk to students who are individuals who use bathrooms with urinals, they'll tell me different things. Some of them are like if it's 1, 3, and 5 are full, some people are like, oh, no, you wait. Other people are like, no, you just use the restroom. Like all different kinds of things. Now think about the fact that this is a gendered phenomenon because all of these unwritten rules. And then when I say to them, how did you learn them? Oh, you just know. I'm like, well, no, you learn from observation. Maybe you learn from a loved one or parent that would take you into bathroom. Like you pick up on observation and the social construction of bathroom usage. But you don't necessarily just innately know because you have the body parts that urinals have been developed for. So think about the fact that a lot of times bathrooms or urinals that are used by people who are male-bodied and masculine, like to make eye contact or speak would not be something that would be far outside the norms. And again, kind of going back to that model of possibly dangerous behavior. In bathrooms that have stalls that are used by people who are feminine or female-bodied, we don't necessarily think of danger in that same way, right? And while we're not necessarily telling each other our life stories and hanging out in there for hours, but it's not unheard of to walk into a bathroom and hear conversations occasionally, right? Depending on the place that you are. Now, for some of you, maybe you've gone to a restroom with a friend and you go into separate stalls and you're utilizing, toilets and things, and they keep talking. And you're like, oh, I don't usually do, but okay. Like, you're not going to be like, oh, I don't talk while I use the restroom. No, you're just going to kind of go along with it, right? Or maybe you're the friend that's like, what does it matter? We don't have to stop our conversation. People have different norms. And so think about kind of the impact of that. Public bathrooms, again, are something that they have been debated as a public space in relation to gender identity over the last several years, very much so with the attempts at legislation and things about 5-6 years ago. And so many of our institutions, a lot of times, and when you throw over various ideologies and religious beliefs and political lenses and all those types of things, we can have a lot of different perceptions. So, but again, think about how the unwritten rules. You don't get a manual for public restrooms saying, this is how you should act. No, but you have to pick up on it. And if you're a person who doesn't, and again, my face is cringy, like that idea of normal. If you go into these spaces and you don't act normal, like it makes people deeply, deeply uncomfortable. Okay, I leave you with this. I'm sorry and you're welcome. I don't even know if this picture is real. Usually when I show it in classrooms, I will have a class of like 30, 40 students be like, but wait, how, why? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just showing you something to get you to be thinking. These apparently are female urinals. I don't know. I don't know if you sit or if you stand it. I don't know. I don't know how tall they are. Like I said, this picture could be completely fake and totally made up. I don't know. But it's kind of a moment to think about the assumptions that we make with indoor plumbing and things. Because if you were to travel the world, which I have not extensively, like what are restrooms in many places in the world? It's a hole in the ground, right? So we make a lot of assumptions for indoor plumbing as is. But I show you this and I leave you with this thinking, like if this is what we had in our society this is the norm for our restrooms, we wouldn't go, what, how, no, because we would just know this is all we would know. So think about the fact that we've been so shaped by this social construction of gender and the gender norms that we follow every day. Which ones have you followed today? Which ones do you agree with and think, yeah, okay, we should do this? Which ones do you totally disagree with and you think, no, this needs to end? That's a conversation we'll be continuing together. So hopefully this is giving you a chance to step back and analyze the world around you. Something that you're doing every single day. Like I said, I'm doing every single day. But kind of get to the why do we do it? And what is helping us? And what is hurting us? And what's maybe hurting others? The impact of this is very significant. And as individuals, we a lot of times have the opportunity to shape not only just norms in general, but gender norms, how we see and operate within gender norms in our own lives and the lives of our loved ones.